Hi there, first-time homebuyer. I'm Dr. Emily Roberts of Personal Finance for PhDs. This video is a selection of a longer live Q&A call that I hosted on May 6, 2021. The featured guest is Sam Hogan, a mortgage originator with Prime Lending who specializes in grad students and PhDs, an advertiser with Personal Finance for PhDs, and my brother. The pair of questions that Sam answers in this video were submitted by attendees of the Q&A call and voiced by me. The questions are on qualifying for a mortgage if you're on an F-1 visa. Do you know of any mortgage lenders that do give loans to international PhD students on an F-1 visa? And Sam, I know you and I have talked about this before, and it's a really tough situation, but explain when they might be able to get a loan and when not.
Yeah, so certain lenders do and do not accept F1 visas. The important thing to remember is that when you're working against the tight monthly income of having a stipend and then also having to work with a certain lender and certain rates and loan terms, they kind of fight against each other sometimes. So we at Prime Lending can offer loans for F1 visas, but the rates they're a lot higher than your normal conventional, and that's where we find our problem is that when the rate's up at the high 4s or 5%, they no longer can be within the monthly qualification off that 30,000 or so dollars a year. So you have to find a lender that can at least give you enough of a chance with the rate and your visa type to basically be successful. I've run this scenario probably like 5 or 10 times with different PhDs who've heard the podcast, and every time they require at least 20% down. They require a higher interest rate because of the foreign national status, and that's where we hit that's our biggest challenge is making it fit monthly when they have to take a higher rate. But and
Maybe.
the last thing I want to say is that it is possible. I don't want to say it's impossible. It's definitely possible to do, but it requires at least 20% down, and you'd have to have a significant stipend and maybe some secondary income to make it work with the guidelines.
And so is that going to be pretty much the same across the board? And the context for my question is for, let's say, domestic students, citizens, and residents who
Mhm.
have that weird fellowship income. Many people in the room probably have had the experience of lenders being like, what the heck is going on? And like, you know how to deal with that, but there's probably only, select few lenders that typically work with a lot of PhD students who know how to do that. Is that going to be the same thing with a student on an F-1 visa, or are they going to get about the same kind of service and responses across the board from different lenders?
I would say it's different from lender to lender, and probably the best bet for someone who has that visa status is working with a local credit union or some type of local bank that is willing to accept that visa status. It's absolutely possible. So I don't want to discourage anyone, but you have to just vet a few companies, make sure they do that footwork up front.
This is from a PhD student at the University of Delaware looking for a home loan on
Mm-hmm.
an F-1 student visa with guaranteed fellowship for the next 4 years, no debt, 7 years, excellent credit history. I do not have EAD card. My current income is not reported on W-2 because of the fellowship. Which lender would you recommend? Some I have reached out to said no to me. Is there anything that you want to elaborate on? We answered this question somewhat before. Is there anything you want to add to it based on this particular phrasing?
Yeah, so I would again recommend you to go to a local credit union, but the way the rules are stated, so like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac set out lending rules for all the lenders, and then a lender looks at that rules and they make some additional rules that are specific to them. Okay, this is a big thing for the visa status because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac say as long as you're here legally and you're working legally, they're okay with it. Now, most lenders have overlays because it's very risky lending to, let's say, a diplomat who, if they foreclose on the home, they can't go after the money legally because they're, exempt from the laws here in the States. That being said, lender to lender, they'll have certain visa types which they consider eligible and some which they are not. So it's possible for people who are here legally, working legally, to get loans. You just have to basically talk to enough people, find someone who can give you the go ahead at the start. I know we take F-1 visas, but only for some of our specialty products, which I mentioned earlier, that have higher rates, and sometimes it doesn't fit everybody's budget.
So this person had the basically two strikes against them, which is one, F-1 visa, two, fellowship income on F-1 visa, so non-W-2. Would the fellowship income pose any additional problem? But like this person has to be even more selective about the lender because of the fellowship income as well.
Yeah, I mean, that does pose an issue because where a credit union or a lender might be strict in one area, they might not be strict in another, right? So from my experience in working with Prime, like we do have, eligible and ineligible visas, but we also like the fellowship income. I had a client who I was speaking with who ended up working with Harvard Federal Credit Union. They had visa issues, stipend, postdoc. It was something we could definitely approve. They ended up working with the Harvard Credit Union because they had a nice product that we didn't actually offer. So that time it worked out for them. And I plan on following up with them to make sure it closed accordingly this past week. So there are options out there. Credit unions are good sources, but like their reputation in the industry is they have longer closing timelines. So where you would get more personalized service with like a mortgage lender, they might not have the leeway that a credit union does, that they keep all their own loans on their own books. They're not selling to a secondary market. So they're okay with the visa type and they can make exceptions for income. And I don't want to say stipend income is an issue. I would call it more of like a challenge. Some lenders see it as more challenging or temporary and less stable. Prime lending, as everyone knows, that's why I'm here. Our lenders use like common sense underwriting. So as long as I can over document a student and show that, hey, they're an expert in their field, this is likely to continue, you should feel comfortable with their approval here on this loan, and that's how we make it work.
If you are a graduate student, postdoc, or PhD, liked this content, and want to ask Sam your own first-time homebuyer questions, please register for our next live Q&A call at pfforphds.com/mortgage. If you would like to contact Sam directly regarding your own mortgage, you can call or text him at 540-478-5803 or email him at samuel.hogan@primelending.com. Thanks for joining us.